Hello, everyone again. I also want to make sure to remind folks sign in if you didn't already. And in just a minute here, I'm also going to drop in the chat a document that just has links to all of the slideshows and also some other helpful links as well as you move through reopening. Next slide, please. Do you want to talk a little bit about this, Julie, first? No? Okay. So a couple of just questions that have come up that we thought we'd bring forward in case you have the same question. So some questions about supplies. There is funds that set aside through some of our relief grants that if you do need supplies specifically to help as you transition into hybrid or help support any of the new guidelines from the RSSL, check with your building. But do know that if you would like district funds to be used for it, then we need to be the ones that purchase it and not do it as a reimbursement. There's been some questions about masks and if kids continually show up, will we have enough? Yes, we are required to provide masks through the RSSL. So they are already out at buildings. If you don't have them and you need them, just check with your building. Next slide, please. For visuals, if there's, there should be visuals and things up in buildings already. If you need more, we definitely can get you some. And then we've also in the doc that I will drop today have some links to just some resources that are already out there that are printable. And then we've also had some questions about movement. Yes, kids are allowed to move around, right? It's just the fact that we want to make sure we have that 6 feet of distance and that we're positioning our furniture in classrooms and learning spaces that allows for that if kids do need to move. All right, I'm gonna turn it back to Julie.
I just wanted to talk about our objectives, which are identifying safe return to school practices and identifying ways that school health services can support our schools.
This summer,
oh, sorry,
the key practices listed. The key practices listed here.
Sorry about that. Every time I move it forward, it talks about the it clicks the thing. So one thing that I noticed that I skipped here is just wanted to start off with just saying that it's been quite a year, and we know that it's not only been stressful for our students, our community, but also all of us, just navigating the pandemic and a lot of the other trauma that's happened over the past year. So I just wanted to read a quote called "Caring for Each Other." And as human beings, we each have a responsibility to care for humanity. Expressing concern for others brings inner strength and deep satisfaction. As social animals, human beings need friendship, but friendship doesn't come from wealth and power, but from showing compassion and concern for others. And so I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you out here that are opening your doors and your minds and your hearts for our students as we go back into school, teaching the kiddos in hybrid.
Today we will discuss what you can do to reduce. This summer, the key practices listed.
I need to turn that off.
The key practice.
Sorry about that. Okay.
School districts in Multnomah.
I'm going to work on this just for a minute. So MESD Health Services, we have Amy Espinor, who is assigned to the high school. And we also have Lainey, who is here with us today. Lainey, do you want to just introduce yourself real fast? Lainey is here to support us. And so if she is able to hear us and pop on in a little bit, that would be great. But Amy, again, her building includes Park Rose High School. And I believe Lainey supports Shaver and the middle school, but I'll double check. But the secretaries will be working closely with Amy and Lainey just to not only identify just the normal kind of nursing services that are needed in our students, but also when we have suspected COVID cases, et cetera.
Registered nurses are independent healthcare professionals. Registered nurses.
Sorry. Let me figure out, Sarah, do you mind trying to see if you can cancel that out, or is it only on my end?
Cancel the audio?
Yeah, can you hear it?
Yeah, but I don't know that there's a way to cancel it.
I know. I think it's just, there's a mute button here, but every time I hit it, I'm hitting, anyway, I'm sorry, you guys. So the nurse role just in general is to support health and wellness for the general student population, do health screenings, connect families to services and other resources. Obviously, at the middle school and the high school, we have the school-based health center, which is a huge resource. As you know, they've been open during the entire pandemic. So they've really been basically a resource for all of Portland. They case manage medically complex and medically fragile students. They do our certain trainings for us. They participate in IEPs and 504s, and they collaborate with our nurse consultant and nurse supervisor. And I just wanted to give a huge shout out to the MESD because they've done a huge amount of work developing a communicable disease handbook and a lot of the processes that have managed looking at COVID presumed and positive cases and what that means. So obviously more than ever, as we return to hybrid, we have to continue to be diligent. And when we hear things that we need to report that as soon as possible, so that if there is a chance that a student might have been on campus at the time that they were contagious, that we can address that right away. And we'll talk more about that later. The nurse supervisor role is something that doesn't have much to do with what you do, but just know that we have people that consult with us on different situations. And we are also in partnership with the Multnomah County Public Health Department in working with everything that's happening as well. So I'm going to go through there. And this is talked about again when you met on Tuesday. But just again, it's primarily spread person to person when a person coughs or sneezes and there's close contact. It can be on surfaces. And so, we do have a more strict cleaning protocol. And so again, wear your mask at all times when you are in the building around people. And again, this is going to be some repetitive pieces, and we're continuing to try and give this information to families as well. So again, stay home when you're sick, cover your cough. Washing your hands is one of the most important things you can do to mitigate the spread of any kind of communicable disease, including COVID. Again, keeping that distance, and as we know, that you talked about on Tuesday at middle school and high school, where you're still, using the 6 feet of distance. Elementary is a little bit different, but again, 6 feet is what we're practicing. Wearing an approved face mask or face covering, and then we're just using our cleaning protocol. We've talked about this. This distancing can change at the elementary level depending on what our the metrics are. But again, we are trying to stick to the 6 feet between students and staff, and then between student to student in middle school and high school. Primary symptoms of COVID. Again, this is something that we are asking families to screen at home before students come. We're asking students to screen themselves, especially older students that can manage and report their own symptoms better than our younger students. Again, fever or chills, a cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, new loss of taste or smell, and it also might include muscle aches, vomiting, diarrhea, and then anything that would be trouble breathing, persistent pain or pressure in the chest, new confusion or inability to awaken, or if it looks like their lips or face appear bluish or grayish, we want to call 911 for emergency medical attention. Again, we're trying to send this information out to families in multiple ways through obviously letters and videos and in many different languages. So we're really hoping that when students get to school, if they, first of all, that they would stay home if they're sick, but also, we'll be making sure that there's different kind of checkpoints that we're visibly kind of observing kids when they walk in to make sure that they look okay. Obviously, this just talks about when you need to stay home. Obviously, if there's a positive COVID-19 or experiencing a COVID-19 symptom, close contact with somebody with COVID-19 or symptoms of COVID, or you have symptoms of COVID, even if there's no close contact with somebody COVID. So again, these are all times when we would stay home. And this is when our nursing supervisors have been incredibly helpful, is they will let us know based on the information they get from the family and from the student, depending on the age, they will let us know when it's appropriate for that student to come back on campus. Again, we're going to have probably be overly cautious, especially in the beginning, even if it's just, if there's a cough and it might be related to allergies, but we're really going to have to rule out when we have students that do have some chronic conditions that might look symptomatic of COVID, but it's something else. And so we'll make sure that we're working with the family, and if needed, we might need a doctor's note or something to say what that would be. This is something that we've shared. I know that the middle school and the high school put out a handbook for families. And so again, this is just a flow chart of when parents or students that would be kind of monitoring themselves would come to school or stay home. And again, just like because we have hybrid, obviously any student that would stay home would just, access CDL, whether if they had to quarantine. Again, this is a visual screen that will just be kind of as students walk in, just kind of looking for, is there any unusual coloration, flushed, pale, dusky, any unusual behavior? Are they extremely lethargic or fatigued? Any new or significant coughing? And we can talk a little bit more about coughing later, but there's, the nurses call coughing like a disruptive cough. So it's not like sometimes if you have allergies, you kind of have like a tickle in your throat. It's more of like a disruptive cough that would be louder and more forceful. Shortness of breath, obviously chills, and if there's somebody throwing up. Bus drivers will screen and notify a student, notify school if a student on the bus has symptoms. We'll visually screen students as they walk in, if that's possible. And then, as you talked about on Tuesday, we have a care room that we would use to assess and see if we need to kind of look more into what the symptoms would mean. And then again, just maintaining privacy of that student to do HIPAA and FERPA, and just be aware of any kind of personal bias. Symptom screening criteria is just, again, this is what we've just talked about. And this is what kind of guides the different types of exclusion. So sometimes it's 10 days, sometimes it's 14 days, sometimes it's only, 24 hours and fever-free. So again, fortunately, we've got our partners at the MESD who are helping with this and again, they'll be consulting with Multnomah County Public Health. And then this just goes into a little bit more information about the care room. So as per the RSSL, any student that is showing a symptom of COVID needs to be isolated from others. And this is something that they've already talked about, I know, on Tuesday, but we just need to make sure that we have students kind of line of sight so that they're not alone in that space. We have to have obviously a symptom tracker log, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then if they have more than one student in the care room, just making sure there's appropriate distance and barriers, which might mean a mask. It might mean, maybe like a little, plexiglass or something like that. If students can tolerate a mask, they need to wear one. Staff, if they're in the room with them, should wear a medical grade face mask and gloves, and then additional PPE can be provided, face shields, gowns, etc. And then we'll talk about more about gloves and things like that. We want to maintain confidentiality, of course, because that's just, again, that's a medical information that should be kept to a minimum amount of people, and just obviously having a calm demeanor when working with students and families. This is something, again, that I know that's a repeat, but after dismissal of an ill student, do not use the area until cleaning and disinfecting. And so that's something that if we have a student that we either tested positive for COVID or a presumed case, or we're still investigating it, we would want to just assume that we would want to clean that and that they are COVID positive, just as far as cleaning and sanitizing. Wear gloves while you disinfect, medical grade face mask and a face shield. If there are body fluids, wear a gown. We have our approved products that we'll be using, and store safely away from children. Hand washing, again, is the most important to mitigate besides wearing a mask. Obviously, before you eat and after meals, after using the restroom, before touching your face, wash your hands after sneezing, coughing, or blowing your nose, or caring for somebody who's sick. Wash your hands after removing your glove, and after touching frequently touched surfaces. So again, that's just, and if you don't have access to a sink, or students don't have access to a sink, then using a hand sanitizer would be great as well. And that is something that there should be one in each classroom and throughout the building. So again, if you're running low, please let your custodian know that you would need more in your classroom or around the buildings. Again, we've talked about the physical distancing. And this is something that you've been talking about this week, to talk about the traffic flow, avoid having students overlap a lot with each other. And just another piece is if students are observed to have a symptom or one or more symptoms of COVID in the classroom, they do need to be supervised while they walk down to the care room. It doesn't mean that somebody has to stand right next to them to escort them. It just means that kind of if you have somebody that can kind of keep them in line of sight as they walk to the office, that would be great, because we just want to make sure that they're not popping into the bathroom and somebody else is there, or they, go a different way where they might have a run into somebody and like create a close contact situation. This is obviously why we wear a mask. And so while you're at school and working with students, you need to wear a mask at all times. And so this is just obviously a visual of when everyone, either the carrier and the healthy person, is wearing a mask with a very low risk of spreading COVID. Again, we need to wear a mask, face covering. You can wear a face shield as well, in addition to your mask. So students and masks, which I know that we have talked about as well. It's obviously required for all of our students attending school. If students do not wear a mask, and then there's a difference obviously between can't and won't. If a student won't wear a mask and they refuse, then they can't be at school. We obviously will invite them, the next time that they have an opportunity to be in hybrid, whether it's the next day or the next week. But again, that is something that they need to wear a mask. If students can't wear a mask, meaning that they have a medical disability, then there will be a plan for that specific student around what that could look like in the classroom, what that would mean. Maybe they can wear a mask for a short period of time. We might use additional physical distancing so that that student's still part of a classroom, but they're further away from other students and staff. So we can talk about that a little bit more. There are certain times you can allow a face covering break. If you have a student that does have some type of sensory issue or medical disability that prevents longer wearing a mask, that would be something that the teacher or the team, depending on who the student is, would talk about specifics so that everybody had a similar understanding of what was expected. Obviously, there might be an IEP or 504 plan that would inform us on what would be a disability or a medical exemption. If we do have a student that we don't know of, but that we realize has a sensory or medical for some health-related concerns that prevent a student from wearing a mask. Sarah, are there any questions?
Nope, I think most of them have been answered just right in the chat. So
Okay.
We're
good. These are times when students actually should not wear a face covering. If they have a medical condition that makes it difficult for them to breathe with face covering, if they experience a disability that prevents them from wearing a face covering, if they're unable to remove the face covering independently, or they're asleep. How to safely wear a face covering: wash your hands before putting on your mask, and then fit it over your nose and mouth and under your chin, and make sure that it fits snugly against the sides of your face. And how you take it off is wash your hands, handle only by the ear loops and the ties, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, and then wash your hands after removing it. Again, we'll talk more about the gloves. They're coming up a little bit. And just some quick tips is imagine that you're carrying the virus, use all the tools provided to help protect others. So just again, just the physical distancing, wearing a mask, that kind of thing. If you leave your desk, please wear a mask. Even, if you're working by yourself inside the classroom or a certain space, if you need to get up and walk around, please put your mask on. If you do not remember when you last cleaned your hands, do it now. Fresh air is better. That's something that each person, each building has different HVAC systems. And so if you have questions about that, please feel free to reach out to one of us. I know that there's been several conversations about it, but again, if you still have questions, let us know. If you think you're 6 feet away, now take 2 more steps backwards. And if you have the option, choose to eat in a location away from others if you're eating on campus. There's, again, kind of what we talked about in the beginning is that we are having students, for some that haven't, they've had quite a year with, especially with the racial injustice that have plagued our country, and just, again, as well as extreme financial crisis and other things which create a lot of like stress and actually toxic stress. So just thinking about some of our students when we come back, some of the students with the case management that the middle school and the high school has been doing have been able to keep in touch and connect with students during this time. Some students might have not have been accessible, but here just, again, some resources. Lions for Life can support staff at schools with suicide risk assessments. Again, just that it'll be nice just to see kids in person, just to see how they're doing, their physical well-being. Again, just like looking at things with a trauma-informed lens, and when working with students. Our student health centers are a great source, obviously, as well as many other community partners that we have. And then again, just kind of keeping an eye on each other as we are going through this part. I think, Sarah, you talked about this on Tuesday as far as attendance and the way that they are taking data on students when they're here in the afternoon.
Yeah, so the important part just for the tracking and the tracing is that when kids are on campus, that you're taking attendance that they did come, and really tracking if there's some reason that they are leaving your classroom, that we know where they've gone. And so if they came late, if they left early, if for some reason they're having to leave your space and go someplace else, all that needs to be on the tracking so that then we can trace. And that's really what it boils down to, is just being able to know who was there, where, when, if there is a positive case.
So Molly and Annette, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that as far as any procedure in your in schools, or if that's already been shared, and that's great. I just want to make sure, like, if a student does step out to go see a counselor, that counselors are also keeping track of when they see students, et cetera.
Julie, I think we have systems set up in both buildings to track late arrivals as well as early release. And that will be managed through both main offices. And then in any case where a student needs to leave a room, other than the restroom, we have a system to trace that.
Great, thanks, Annette. Again, this is just working with the MESD and our health department. And so again, just like we've heard about a lot of different situations, whether it's a sports team or a classroom. So we really want to make sure that as soon as somebody is at school experiencing a symptom, or you hear of something from a family or a student, that we let kind of start our system right away. And so again, our infrastructure to track potential contacts to reduce the spread is we're going to use a form called this symptom tracking tool, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then they are providing guidance for next steps as far as what we need to do with students. Okay, and we already talked about that. And again, just because there is misinformation out there and there's blaming, and there's been particular terms that have been used to create bias and racism within certain, like with the, using like blaming Asian population for the spread of COVID, et cetera. We just wanted to make sure that there's no link between COVID-19 infection, a person's race, color, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, or national origin. Anyone can become infected with COVID-19 and anyone can spread COVID-19. So that's just something that as we become in person, that just paying attention to if we have a student that does need to leave the classroom down to the care room, that we're trying to maintain that confidentiality at all times. And again, these are different resources. There's lots of reading in here. So if there's anything, this is all kind of posted on a document that Sarah provided. So if you want to look at anything in more detail, we have that. Okay, so we're gonna just take like a 1 minute little activity. The cure for burnout isn't and can't only be self-care. It has to be all of us caring for each other. And so that's just something that kind of links to the first part, is that we have to support each other so that it's not just on one person. We're all sharing the load of how we can get through all this. And so just in the chat, or you can just think it in your head or say it out loud. What is your favorite physical activity or exercise? I see lots of, badminton in the backyard, kayaking, running, rock climbing, soon to be tennis, especially with all that nice weather last week. The dog, snowboarding. So great. That is something that if you enjoy getting out and exercising, that's a great way to support your physical health and mental health. The other piece is just there's sometimes when we talk about breathing, I don't want to, it can just be kind of understated, but just breathing can really be helpful when we're feeling a little bit nervous or overwhelmed. And what happens is when you start to look into just like paying attention to your breathing and doing some breathing exercises, it regulates the nervous system. You kind of tune into your breath for about 1.5 minutes, and that really can just, if you can just pay attention to that, that can really help your whole nervous system kind of calm down. And let me see if I can play this here. Maybe, I'm sure lots of you have already seen this, but. Sorry, just my computer's a little slow here.
Please. Again. See, it's a confidence.
Anyway, it's just a good reminder that even when we teach our kids at youngest ages, it helps, and just focusing on your breathing. So we're just having our little 1 minute tips throughout this meeting. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. Please feel free to turn off your screen, move around. And then if you have any additional questions when we get back, put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. All right, we have about 1 more minute before we get started again. Welcome back, everyone. I just wanted to, just if everyone's been looking at the chat, if anyone has any questions, just like Annette said, please feel free to type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. It can be building specific, it can be RSSL related. So if you have any questions right now, feel free to, again, type them in the chat or unmute yourself. And I just wanted to introduce Lainey. She is one of our other MESD nurses, and she is here at 0.5. Lainey, do you want to just unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. If you have any issues with any of your schools, I'm one of the nurses that you're going to be speaking with and helping all you and the kiddos out for the rest of the school year.
And Lainey is on Parkrose email, so feel free, you can find her if you need to email. All right, so let's just get started again. So I just want to talk about visual screening, just in a little more detail. So again, just understanding the difference between a visual screening and a full screening, which staff just around the building will not be required to do a full screening. We'll have people in the office and our nurse consultants helping with that. Obviously identify what symptoms to look for and next steps if illness is suspected.
Julie, your screen is not shared yet.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm just talking to myself and
No worries.
Let me just pop out of here real fast. Sorry, I have 2 screens going so I can see notes and also look at things. So sorry about that. So just back to the visual screening versus a full screening. Again, what we talked about the visual screening is just what we can observe when students walk in or any type of student complaint. So again, do they feel nauseous? Do they have a headache? Any kind of muscle pain? Do they experiencing a fever, sore throat, loss of taste or smell, or just a general unwell feeling that prevents participation in class? And that would again be if they're at school, we would ask them to go down to the care room. And then a full screening, and that's something that once they're in the care room that we can look at that more and see what our next steps are. We will be visually screening students when they board the bus, when they enter the school building, and just throughout the school day. And again, we've talked about this a few times. Again, any unusual behavior, which could be irritation, being really tired, any kind of unusual coloration, respiratory symptoms, including coughing and shortness of breath. And again, just kind of that piece of knowing the baseline symptoms and chronic conditions. And so we will have students that do have more, that might have kind of persistent coughs, and kind of trying to distinguish that between a possible symptom of COVID. Talked about that. And then again, if a student complains of any of these, refer to the care room and we can do a full screening down there. Again, we talked about any type of trouble breathing, persistent pain or pressure in the chest, confusion, or lips or face appearing bluish or grayish, they would need immediate medical attention. So just one thing, as I just kind of said, I'd kind of put these three out there, but looking at our stress cycles is really important, that when we experience stress, that our bodies can deal with the adrenaline and cortisol that creates. And so what we don't want to happen is, as you know, if you have a lot of adrenaline rushes and we don't physically release it, that can build up, like that, more of that toxic stress piece that can really take a toll on people's health. And so here's some ways to mitigate that. One of it is positive social interaction. Those positive social interactions tells your body that it is safe to be with that person and in that environment. So whether it is positive social interactions with your students, with your colleagues, with families, that lets them know that that creates a relaxed, calm state in people's bodies, and lets them know it's safe. Laughter is a huge piece of completing that stress cycle that physically can release that stress. And it makes and maintains social bonds, and it's a universal language across the globe. And so you can just think this in your head, you can say it out loud, or you can put in the chat, when was the last time you laughed so hard you snorted or snotted? And that's such a fun thing. And even just thinking back of when you had a really good laugh, that can actually create that kind of positive endorphin feeling in your body. That's great. That's nice to see. Oh yeah, Ted Lasso was pretty funny. Thanks everyone for sharing. Appreciate it. Okay, so this is the part, Lainey, if you don't mind, just, popping in when you'd like to add anything, or I probably defer to some of these, because Lainey and Amy have had a lot of experience with when we get a report of a student that might be experiencing a symptom of COVID or has tested positive for COVID. So what do we do with reports of illness for staff, students, and families? So this is a communicable disease response. So if staff or student leaves early due to illness, and we've looked at that, complete the symptom tracker tool, and that's the STT. Secretaries have been trained on the STT, as well as Amy and Lainey. So they will be the ones that will be filling that out, and that starts the whole process.
And the reason, could I jump in?
Just jump right in. Yep.
Yeah, and the reason, we do the STT forms on everything, not just what we think could potentially be COVID. We do it for everything: headaches, sore throats, if somebody has an unexplained cough, even just a cough that comes due to allergies. We want to make sure that it's on a form for all of us to be able to follow up with. So at least we have that in front of us, and if there's any issues, we can contact the parent, and we just have some dates listed on this form for us to follow up with. So
thanks, Lainey. And so again, that symptom tracking tool, the STT, it's initiated by school staff to document student or staff symptoms when an illness is reporting, or if the student is referred to the isolation room, the care room, pending parent pickup. Information from the STT will populate into a response sheet, and the nurse provides follow-up and determines the student outcome based on provided information and symptoms. And again, this just starts the whole process. And again, so as soon as any staff, if you hear from a student, or if the family calls or anything like that, please let Molly and Nicole know at the high school, and let Annette and Elisa know at the middle school, so that somebody in the office can start that STT. Because sometimes if a student is presumed positive or positive at school, we'll have to figure out if we need to do any kind of quarantining with staff and students. So the earlier that we can get the information, the earlier that we can get next steps.
And can I pop in again?
Yes, please do.
Also, what we've been finding in the elementaries, which has been helpful, is a lot of our teachers, even just when they're CDL, say the student will mention casually something that somebody's sick at home and it's due to maybe a close contact. So if you hear anything like that with your students, we definitely want you to let the secretary know, so that we can get that STT form started.
So again, just to reiterate, whether it is a student only in CDL or they are also on let Molly and Nicole know at the high school, as well as Annette and Elisa. Okay, and this next one is where we find the symptom tracking tool. And again, we have assigned people, the secretary said all the buildings have been trained. And so this links directly to either whatever school you're at. So it's listed by district, and then under the district, it links by school. And then what happens is this, again, like what Lainey was talking about, it starts the kind of like information gathering and figure out what next steps are. And that will just be shared if there is a student that has been diagnosed as being positive. We would only notify people that were determined as a close contact and then given information. But as you know, we can't release names, whether it's staff or student, due to HIPAA. So if you are determined a close contact, you will be notified. If there is a student at the school that is not in the class, it's not going to be publicly shared that there would be a case. It would just be people that would be notified that would on a need to know basis. Any questions on that? Okay, so I'm going to skip this part. And so this is just more detail that this is what Amy and Lainey work more off of. Mary, as you know, Mary Bradbury Jones does all of the adult COVID information forms. And then secretaries enter into the STT, and then Amy and Lainey do the SCIF. So again, this just helps us make decisions on if, when, who we need to notify, and if we need to have anybody quarantine. And then every time we submit information, we get a debrief email from the nurse consultant. And so that will tell us what we need to do as far as who we notify, and if that student needs a quarantine, and if so, how long, and then the date that they can return to school. And again, if it's a staff person, it would get a date and when they could return to work. Again, what we would just, and especially if we have a student that, even if they just have a symptom, we don't want to wait to clean the room until after we receive kind of any kind of confirmation. So we're just going to assume that we'll need to clean and follow cleaning protocol. So if you have a student that looked like if you visually screen them, they might have had a symptom or two, and you send them to the care room. Just please let somebody in the office know so they can notify some custodial that they would want to clean that after the students leave. Okay, and you don't have to worry. Most of you don't have to worry about the STT or the SCIF. PPE, personal protective equipment. And again, this will be if we have students that aren't able to wear masks or can only wear masks for a shortened period of time. Anybody can request if you would like a face shield in addition to your mask. If you want to wear gloves, if you want to wear a gown, that is all. We have that if you want that. If you're working closely with students that might need to be like physically prompted for something or have bathrooming needs, etc., we have PPE that we can provide at school. And obviously what we want to do is just make sure we are preventing the spread of infection from person to person. So there's that hand washing, wearing the appropriate PPE, again, proper handling of needles and sharps, and respiratory hygiene and cough etiquette, which we've talked about. And this is just what kind of PPE you should wear. Obviously, if it's wet, wear gloves. If you're in the building, you want to wear a face covering. If you're caring for students with illness symptoms, wear a medical grade face mask. If it could spray in your face, wear a face shield. And if it could splash on your clothes, wear a gown. So again, this is just when you put on PPE. First, you want to put on your gown, then you put on a mask, then you put on a face shield, and then your gloves. And then when you remove it, you would do basically kind of the opposite way with hand washing in between. So first you would remove your gloves, then you would take off the gown, wash your hands, remove the face shield, and wash again and do the mask. We talked about this. Lainey, anything else that you want to add about STT or any tracking or anything like that, PPEs?
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. And again, just removing gloves is you're going to grasp the outside of one glove at the wrist. Don't touch your bare skin. Peel the glove away from your body, pulling it inside out. Hold the glove you just removed in your gloved hand. Peel off the second glove by putting your fingers inside the glove at the top of your wrist. Turn the glove inside out while pulling it away from your body, leaving the first glove inside the second, and dispose of gloves in the trash. And again, wash your hands after disposing of the gloves. This is just staff rules. So, just talks about everyone's required to wear a face covering. A face shield is recommended if you can't maintain distance. Obviously, a speech pathologist might be wearing a face shield. So if they're doing particular work with students on articulation and other language related instruction, they can see the full face. And then you would be wearing gloves just on your bloodborne pathogen training. And I'm going to skip that one. Okay, this is just, again, ways to complete the stress cycle. There's an affection, a warm hug, and with a safe and trusting person. A 20-second hug can lower heart rate, blood pressure, and change stress hormones. A big old cry allows emotion to go all the way to the end of your stress cycle. Pay attention to the physical sensation of crying. And creating an expression, take whatever is inside you, outside of you, with your energy. Obviously, there's art, music, stories, movement, writing, collage, and imagination. So just part of the references is included on the several page document that Sarah shared when she shared all the links, but we can send those out. And again, most of you probably don't want to read through it. And please feel free just to, you can ask questions now or email us at any time if you have questions. That is not related to what we're doing. So I'm going to stop sharing right now and just see if there's any other questions that people have. Okay, so Emily, I'm just looking at your question. So that's a really good question, Emily. That's something that I don't know, Molly or Annette, if you wanted to talk about how you're taking attendance and tracking students while they're in hybrid. And then Emily, that would be something that you would need to think about what you're doing as specialists. I don't know if there's a Google tracking form or whatever, but that would be something that you can take your own personal contact log and write down, and then just making sure it's accessible for if we do have to contact trace. The thing is, we need to have something that's in a document that the nurse can look at. So she wouldn't have to go to each person and say, oh, have you had contact with this person? They would want to kind of have a central location of when, if they're looking into a student's activity, they can find that.
I see a question. Sarah, you can wear a face shield, but you're also required to wear a mask as well, but you can definitely wear a face shield if that's comfortable for you.
And Sarah, we can order the masks that are clear across your mouth. So yeah, not instead, but you'd have to do in addition to.
And Emily, we're gonna just give counselors a tab in the attendance sheet that we have, and you'll just mark add a kid and which day they were with you. So then we would just be able to track by day who the student had contact with, and it's all in one place.
Can that be locked for confidentiality and only be seen by certain staff?
Yeah, we can. I don't think necessarily it needs to be confidential that a student saw a counselor. There's no details around the visit.
So I think that it doesn't necessarily need to be locked as long as you're not typing notes in that document.
Laura had a question about supplies. If students were able to touch the same supplies like markers, the RSSL recommends that whenever possible, that students have their own supplies. If there is some sort of specialty supply that students do have to share, they need to be cleaned or disinfected between student uses.
And then just have students wash their hands after using it, or using a hand sanitizer.
Yeah, and that's really one of the #1 things they'll say with supplies is wash before you use them, wash after you use them, and that really mitigates some of the risk there too in sharing.
And then,
Carrie had a question about going to the counselor. Do you want to handle that, Julie or Annette or Molly?
Yeah, I can. So definitely kids can go to the counselor. We're asking that it's prearranged as much as possible so students can go in that entrance and not be traveling around the building. We know that's not always the case, but we are going to ask that that it's arranged between the counselor and the teacher and not just students requesting in the middle of it. So again, we're avoiding students like roaming the hallway. So either it'll be prearranged by the counselor and they'll let the teacher know, or if the teacher has a concern, they can reach out to the counselor and communicate that way, but just not like a student just asking to go and then sending them without communication between the counselor.
Great, thanks. Lainey, would you mind answering Elizabeth's question about someone being sick but testing negative?
Yes, Sarah, I'm going to jump in really quickly just off to piggyback off of Molly's. That's
of course, Annette.
Same procedure for seeing counselors at the middle school that it is at the high school, and that it will be prearranged by counselors. And if teachers have a concern, they can contact the counselors and see about scheduling a time where a counselor can meet with them.
Okay, so the question was, if someone is sick but tested negative for COVID, what are the guidelines for returning to the building? And, you know, we want you all to let the secretary know, and she will put that in the STT list for us. But typically, if it's somebody left school because they were sick and then got a COVID test afterwards that showed that they were negative, they can return to the building the next day. If there's another situation where, you know, child was sick, tested negative before they had come to school, there are other guidelines with that. So it's all on a case-by-case basis.
And I'll just add to Lainey's is it really depends on where they are within kind of their symptoms, because they can be contagious throughout their whole piece of the what they might experience as COVID. And so sometimes people won't necessarily show symptoms, which could result in a negative test maybe on like day 3 or day 4, but maybe by day 7, they could be contagious. And so a negative test doesn't automatically mean that they would return to the building. So just like Lainey said, it's kind of a case-by-case basis, and they and the nurses do a great job of just getting that information to figure out, because obviously we want kids in school and participating in activities as quickly as possible. And also it's our job to keep students at the lowest risk possible and staff from getting ill. So it's that fine line. And as you've heard in the news, there's a lot of angst around quarantining and that kind of thing. So just know that, you know, our approach and MESD and public health is going to be cautious and erring on the side of having students out, even if there's a negative COVID test or they're not showing symptoms, that type of thing.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too, you know, we are being very cautious. We have, you know, doing the elementary schools now, you know, and speaking with a lot of parents that have had their kids sent home. It's more frustration on the parent side because we're being more cautious. You know, we send kids home for allergies, for example. They go home until we know for a fact that it is just allergies. And we do this, you know, just to protect all of you and everyone in the school. So.
Thanks, Lainey. We had some questions about cleaning supplies. So do check with your custodians if you want. They have the information sheets on all of the cleaning supplies that are being provided to classrooms. The main one is, if you're working in a classroom, is that disinfectant spray. And we talked about it at the last session, which is the spray and leave. And so it's labeled. They're all labeled, and the bottles, you know, should be in your classrooms. If not, like Annette said, do just check. But that spray and leave is the one that's going to be utilized the most. You spray it, it dries. Once it's dry, it's disinfected. And so if you have specific questions about any of them, do reach out to the custodians. They're all CDC approved chemicals being used for COVID.
Okay, so just going to Lynn's question, are there decisions about if we would do a hold on hybrid if everyone in Multnomah County cases go up to a certain number? Michael, are you here? Is Michael here? Okay, with that particular thing, we will continue to operate in hybrid.
No, I'm here.
Michael is in the library if you need him.
Oh, okay, great. He knows the specifics on this one, so if he's able to get on, I'll just come back to that, Lynn. Annette, did you want to address Jody's question about students going to different doors to enter?
Yeah, so we're in both buildings going to do essentially a soft start. So from 1 to 1:15, students will be coming in as they arrive so that they aren't gathering outside in groups. And they do have different doorways. I know at the high school, they have doorways based on classroom placement. At the middle school, our doors are identified based on grade level. So 6th grade will come in through the side door, 7th graders through the main doors, and 8th graders through the recess doors. And once they're in the building, they'll go directly to their cohort classroom.
And then Zach had a question, how are we tracking larger cohorts when some students are jumping between different groups throughout the week in the high school? So I would say Molly's talking about the attendance tracking sheet. Molly, did you want to add a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think from what I've seen on that sheet, everyone's marking when students are with them and aren't with them, and then there's room to add a student. There are not restrictions to cohorts, and we would, with only 3 days a week, we wouldn't be exceeding those restrictions anyways, but we do have a tracking system in place for students being with different teachers throughout the week.
And Chris has a question, the transportation, when will final routes be released? Let's see, that should be coming out really soon. Molly or Nat, do you know that one yet?
Yeah, Julie, I think Teresa just finished it today. So there is a link available, Chris, that we can send out and make sure everyone has so that you can share it with families. It's also going to be on both school websites as well. Thanks,
Annette.
And Julie, I can speak a little bit to, just because it's in the RSSL, to the question about shifting from hybrid. And I'm not going to go into super detail, but if you go into the RSSL on page 15, it talks about that. With the governor's reopening guidance that came out recently, it also shifted some of the metrics and shifted what school districts can and can't do in terms of reverting to CDL based on county metrics. And so really that decision is going to be made in partnership with local health authorities, that if cases did go up, then we would work with them. But that shifted as well with that. So what I would say is take a look, because it is in the RSSL in pretty thorough detail. And then if that still doesn't help, then do reach out and we can see if we can provide some other guidance around it.
And Sarah, your question about getting a substitute, we just use a normal process. We have access to MESD and we'll put subs into MESD into the system. If no one picks it up, then we'll see what we can do at the building level.
Any other questions people have right now? I know the questions will come up, so please obviously reach out to your building administrators and office staff, depending on what the question is. You can reach out to Sarah and I. And again, just kind of going back to, if you hear of a case or if you notice something, just like Lainey said, we are being overly cautious as we want to try and reduce the risk as much as possible. So again, next week, I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, and yeah, just reach out. Anything else before we close up?
Yeah, I have a question. Molly and Annette, you said that kids would start coming in at what time?
We're planning on a soft start between 1 and 1:15, Jennifer.
Okay, because teachers are required to be at the building from 1 to 4, so I'm just a little bit concerned that if I'm walking in the building at 1 o'clock and, right, because we have an hour to eat lunch and to travel from home if we're working from home. So is there like the kids just wait at my door if they're here? I mean, or I just let them in and tell them to sit down?
I think we were planning on a start time of 1, but I think we're planning, we're not anticipating a huge group. I don't think we're seeing any bus arrivals until like 1:07. So it's mainly going to be kids who are dropped off early at the middle school or get there early at the high school. I don't think it'll be a ton of kids right at 1, and we can delay it by a couple minutes. But what we want to avoid is that sort of mass gathering out in front of the building and letting them in as they arrive.
Yeah, I thought we were with students. I mean, like 1:15 to 3:45.
1:15
Yeah,
is,
we wouldn't start until 1:15, but from 1 o'clock, we will start letting kids into the classrooms and the buildings to get settled in as they arrive.
Any other questions? Thanks everybody for your time today. We really appreciate it. I just want to see, okay. So yeah, again, reach out if you have questions. Thank you, Molly and Annette, for jumping in, and thank you, Lainey. I appreciate all your time today. Thanks.